Hey everybody, we're going to talk about email marketing today. One of my favorite things to do, probably my most favorite form of marketing actually. So the biggest misconception that everybody has is that you start a newsletter and then once a month you write an email to whoever's on your or on your newsletter list. And it doesn't matter if you have one person or 40,000 people, they all get the same thing. And the problem with that is nobody really wants to subscribe to a newsletter. They want, something a little more applicable to where they're at and when they're there than something where they're just thrown into a bucket with everybody and their dog. And the other thing is, for your experience, it's really hard to get motivated to write a really nice email when you have 6 people on your list. If you had 40,000, then you would get your butt in your chair and you'd do it. But, too many people are slacking off in the beginning when they start email lists and not contacting their people for that reason. So we want to talk about automated sequences today and how you can set yourself up to have a good experience for your people and for yourself, and have very little work to do in the coming years if you set up right now. So that's where we're going. If you have not gotten an email program set up with your website, you really need to do that. That needs to be like number one, because you need to start collecting email subscribers as soon as possible.
You can refer back to our video on deplatforming for discussions as to why this is critical.
For most purposes, Alice and I are recommending MailerLite at this time. If you have e-commerce, then I'm going to say OmniSend or Klaviyo. But almost everybody will do really well with just MailerLite. They have a free program that's really good. They let you set up automations on the free program, which is super important, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Alice, why don't you talk about how you got started with your automation and then what that morphed into?
So I started first with my inner healing business that I had like I think 11 point list of just tips and strategies that people could have. It was a 1-page PDF that people could sign up for, and then they would get the PDF as kind of the opt-in bribe or the cookie or whatever you can call it. So then for each email after that, and I believe that I'd have to double check, but this is still my sequence. So 7 years later, because they're still applicable. Every now and then I'll kind of go in and tweak something or whatever, and it's getting time that I should do that again. But so I just took each point and I kind of expanded on that a little bit more. They weren't, super long. I wasn't at that point knowing that I was writing a book, but which is what they ended up turning out to be. So I just kept kind of expanding on the content under each one of those, that basic list of things. So, and it's worked really well. And then I just have added, so that kind of gave me a place to get started. And again, I'd have to double check on the timing. But it's like every day for a couple of days, and then it kind of increases the time in between people as they're used to who I am and hearing from me. So, and then now I just kind of keep adding things in towards the back end, but kind of, which is I think what you do as well, Seneca. It's and there weren't that many people to get started with, but that is now what everybody gets, and I still get a lot of good comments on how effective it is and helpful it is for people. So, which was the other point. I wanted it to be beneficial. So,
yes.
But
yes, always give the person on the other end a benefit to reading and hearing from you. Anytime you touch base with them, they need to have a benefit. It can't be all just buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff.
Yeah.
So you can mix that in there, but there always needs to be something that's either informative or entertaining or just, of value to them.
Yeah, and think about why you like to open things. So, there's some things that I just click delete, and every now and then I'm like, why do I even, so I'll go in and unsubscribe because I just keep hitting delete because
Yeah.
they just haven't given me anything that I want to read in a while. So, or I've completely forgotten who they are.
Which is why you want to email your people, because then if you decide that you're gonna, oh, I should write an email 6 months down the road, and they're like, who's this chick? I never signed up for this, and they're gonna mark you as spam because they don't remember you.
Yeah.
And
And
then that
I
hurts
think
your
I'm
vendor reputation.
Yeah, and I think for some of them, what I wonder, but I have no way of knowing, is I think they changed the from name, and or it's just coming from like a person, and I don't. I may recognize the business name, but I don't know the person that's sending me these things. So,
Right.
so I would, and that's one of the things too, to like double check and see, okay, is this coming from, and I'm trying to do that more now. This is Alice at emotionalandspiritualhealing.com or Alice at Kingdom Covers, whatever it is, so that it is from a person, but this is the business.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. The research out there is like, oh, people like to hear from people. They don't want to hear from a business.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's only true if I know the person.
Right. Yeah. Because I don't want to hear from just random.
Right. I was like, okay,
Person, yeah.
what company are you? Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, yeah. And so, and I think, and it's kind of interesting, if you have a very common name, it's tricky, but also if you have a very unusual name, it's tricky because, people are like, they don't have a grid for, like, I don't know who that is. So, and the spammers are are out there in force. So that's going to be people's kind of knee jerk if they don't have kind of an instant recognition. Mm-hmm. So,
well, and I started out the same way as Alice. I have a 7-day free mini course that is just emails. So, every day for 7 days, they're going to get something that's really beginner info and need to know. And I don't even know how many years later, it is still very need to know, and it's still in place. So after that 7 days, they probably figured out who I am by then, and I can decrease the frequency. So then they get something once a week for a little while, and then every 2 weeks, and then every 3 weeks. And so a lot of what I've done is just taken blog posts or literally anything I've written and tacked them on to the end of my sequence. And that's just ongoing. I have no idea how many there are now, but there's probably a year's worth of content, I'm guessing. So I could actually just take a year off from writing if I wanted to at this point, which gives you a lot of flexibility and one less thing to do. All your new people are still getting all the information that they need.
And by the end of a year, I think they've established a relationship with you, or they haven't. They've made a decision one way or the other, and either is fine. If they're not your customer, then they are free to go away. That's fine. So, but they're likely to remember who you are, even if it is 6 months after that or whatever. So, although that's probably not ideal anyway, but
it's not. I still send emails because I want to make money. So I will make a point of coming up with something.
Yeah. And
you have
a direct correlation there between email sent to cash and bank. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can write an email and make $1,000. So it behooves me to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So mine's still, it's not that immediate a thing. So it's a little less motivating, but I still, like, for me, part of it is I get curious about things, and then I just like to share what I've learned and hope that it helps people. And so,
yeah. And that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. And I like for some of the content that I'm working on now, like they get to hear it to see it first. Like I'm putting them into books and I'll publish them on Amazon and all of that. And that's kind of more where I'm wanting to make the money from that content at this point anyway. So, but they get the information sooner.
Well, and some people, even though they're getting it for free, they still like it all packaged up nicely for them.
Yeah. Well, and that's I mean, I make 3 figures a month on stuff that people can read for free on my website. So that they buy on Amazon. So and that number would probably go up if I would go back to all of those posts and
Link them.
link them to the book. So and that's for me as well. Like if it's something that's really helpful for me, then I'm going to want the book. I'm not going to want to have to try and remember, okay, which site was it? What page was it? You know, can I find it again? That's a pain. I just want the book in hand. I can open it up. So, or, you know, on my device, or if it's an ebook or whatever. And
Well, and you can mark it up in a book, and I retain better if I read a physical copy of something.
yeah,
Figure that out. So
yeah,
I'm buying more books lately.
yeah. Yeah, there's something for me about, I don't know if it's the retention or if it's just the ability to refer back to it quickly and like keeping it, like I've got like kind of, I have several books that are like right in my line of sight to remind me, okay, this is one of your focuses for this year. So
Yeah.
don't forget, that's what you're doing. So that's a little harder to do on your device.
It's really hard. Everything's out of sight, out of mind in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
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 So
So
one of the things that we were talking about the other day with our automations, because there's your basic automation that we've been talking about where people just land on your email list. They may or may not be a customer or client of yours yet.
mhm,
But then there's the automations that you can also put in place once they have become a customer or a client.
mhm,
So for me, as soon as somebody wants to buy a custom combo, which involves a consultation with me, they can either choose email or a phone consult. I have automation set up for both of those. If it's an email consultation, then I have an automation that sets up and starts to initiate that conversation with them to find out what it is they want out of their essence. And then I take it from there once they've responded to that email. And if it's a phone consult, then my automation sets them up to go over to my Calendly and book an appointment time with me. Someone else is using it for lead up to their appointment. Before they have an appointment with them, there is some information that these people need to understand and know, and maybe some forms to fill out and things like that, which makes the appointment go much, much smoother for them. So there's all these things that you can do with an automation that you really need to put to work because
mhm.
the less you have to do, the better.
And one of the things I purchased kind of a little quiz that gave me information. And then it wasn't as long as I wanted, which is a sign of a good of a good email sequence. So I was like, oh, he's not sent me anymore. But like I got the PDF printout of like what everything meant. And then for a while they were sending emails, kind of specific to my type. It was a marketing thing. So and that was, it wasn't a very long sequence. And like I said, I would have preferred it would have been longer. But that's also another way that you can use those kind of product specific follow-up sequences.
Mhm.
So to keep people engaged and to help them get the most out of what they've purchased from you. So
Right. Alice and I and Della wrote a book together called Accessing Your Spiritual Inheritance. And it was just born out of playing around with a 528 and testing that, one of the essences. And anyway, now if people buy that essence, they get linked to a blog post that Alice and I wrote after they buy the essence so that they can, get our template and our information and how we did things. And then there's a book upsell at the bottom, but
mhm,
pretty much everything they really need is in the template,
mhm.
enough to get going. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, one of the things that you may have noticed, but I'll just state it clearly. Don't be afraid to give away a lot of information. So like we mentioned earlier, Seneca and I both lean more towards giving more information rather than less, and keeping things behind a paywall. And people still pay for it. So that Accessing book, I mean, it's been out for 6 years, 7 years,
Probably.
something like
Yeah.
that. And it still sells very, very well.
Yep.
So because it helps people. And that blog post is on my site. I think it's on Dell's site. It's on Seneca's site. I mean, it's out there. It's not that difficult to find, and people still want to buy the book. So, so that's.
Well, and a lot of people,
Go ahead.
I've been working on my eyesight for the last while, maybe 4 years or something, through myopia.org, which is, a process of challenging your eyes to see better and better and better until you get back to 2020. So he has this Back to 2020 program, and I don't know how much money it is, but it's a lot, But all of the information that's in that program is actually on his website. It's on YouTube. It's in blog posts. You're free to avail yourself to all of that stuff, but people still sign up for that program.
Mhm. I mean, having something conveniently packaged is worth a lot of money for people.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what I like about it is you're not excluding anybody based on their inability to pay. They're still going to get help. They just have to maybe work a little bit harder to go through it themselves and not be spoon fed. And you can get it if you want it.
Yeah. And if you don't, well, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All righty. Well, good luck setting up your email sequences, and hopefully this helps give you some ideas and tips on how you can be more successful at doing so.
Yeah, and if you want to work with Alice and I, we have a class for that, and we do tech workshops every other month, and we'll help you set things up if you absolutely cannot figure it out from the instructions that your email provider links. See, there it is again. This is our free stuff, but we have a paid thing. All
righty. We'll see y'all later.